Hello, how are you? Today I'm going to talk to you about a famous bread that appears in the Bible and has been widely discussed on the internet these days. This recipe for this bread is already over 2,000 years old, and nowadays science shows that this combination can help control blood sugar, increase satiety, and even improve gut health. I'm going to tell you what the ingredients of this bread are and what science has been able to prove about its benefits. You're going to love this video, so stay until the end because you won't want to miss it. Before I start telling you more about this bread, which is so high in protein and actually quite tasty, I want to ask if you have the habit of eating bread in your daily life. What kind of bread do you eat? Do you eat bread more during small meals or even at lunch or dinner? There are people who actually replace those meals with bread, right? How does that work for you? I would love to see your comment. Also, tell me if you stopped eating bread because you were afraid it might be bad for your health. Some people have stopped and replaced it. And if you did that, what did you replace it with? I would love to see your comment. If you can, go ahead and like the video. This is really important to me. It shows YouTube that you support the channel and that you trust my content. And if you know someone who's interested in this topic, share the video. Let's help more people. That's what I want here with our chain of kindness. The recipe for this bread that I'm going to talk about here actually appears in the Bible in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 4, verse 9. It's a bread whose recipe is presented in a context of scarcity, but it's a mix of ingredients that, for that time of survival during a difficult period, has a very important nutritional value. Today, with the backing of science, we know and can see why this bread was recommended, and everything else, science is able to explain it quite clearly. When we look at this combination, which is described there from a more scientific perspective, it makes perfect sense because the base of this bread is barley. Look how interesting. Lentils, beans, millet, spelt, and wheat. So it's an extremely nutritious bread, very rich in protein, and something interesting, it has protein complementarity because this combination ends up working really well. The first point is precisely this issue of protein, right? A lot of people believe that protein only comes from animal-based foods, but we know that's not true, right? Plants also contain protein. The problem is that usually, plants on their own have protein with an incomplete amino acid profile, meaning that some essential amino acids may be missing in certain types of plants. So amino acids are fundamental for our bodies. They participate in muscle building, hormone production, enzymes, neurotransmitters. Practically everything in our body depends on them, and some the body simply cannot produce. They need to come from food. You have to eat them. That's why they're called essential, because we can't convert some into others. So there's a classic nutrition strategy called protein complementation. For example, cereals we already know, right? Barley, spelt, and wheat are usually low in an amino acid called lysine. And legumes like lentils and beans, for example, are rich in lysine but have less of another one, which is methionine. So when we combine the two, we get a complete amino acid profile, which significantly improves the amino acid profile of the meal. And here's an important point, because ideally, we shouldn't consume just one type of bread made with only one type of ingredient. And since this bread has various nutrients and several different types of ingredients, when we analyze the bread's amino acid profile, it actually turns out to be much more interesting and complete, making it a really great option to include in your daily diet. There's also a second very interesting point when we compare this bread from the recipe with a traditional white wheat bread, which is the issue of blood sugar and energy. When you eat a traditional white bread, the digestion is very fast, right? We know that glucose spikes very quickly. The body releases a lot of insulin, which creates an energy peak followed by a drop, tiredness, quick hunger. But with this type of bread I mentioned, from this more elaborate, more complete recipe, the presence of fiber and protein completely changes this scenario. The fibers form a gel in the intestine, which slows down digestion, and as a result, glucose enters the bloodstream more slowly, insulin rises in a more controlled way, and energy remains stable for longer. In practice, this means several things, right? Mainly, it means more satiety, less hunger throughout the day, and fewer cravings for sugar or snacks. This also ends up having a big impact on weight loss because it prevents insulin spikes, and we know that insulin is an anabolic hormone that promotes fat accumulation. So the body tends to store less fat, and it also helps control blood sugar. So it's much more nutritious, much more beneficial for our health and our body. Besides that, as I mentioned, this bread is really rich in fiber. It has beans, lentils, and barley. And fiber isn't just for the digestive tract, for intestinal transit. They feed the beneficial bacteria throughout the digestive tract, improving the gut microbiota. And when they are fermented in the large intestine, they produce short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate, for example, which is associated with reduced inflammation, improved insulin sensitivity, and strengthening of the intestinal barrier, which is even linked to a lower risk of the onset and progression of metabolic diseases. So that's really wonderful as well. We need to talk a little about how to prepare this bread because there's an important detail regarding its preparation and digestibility. It's not just about the ingredients themselves, right? When we use whole grains, we end up keeping the fiber and nutrients, but there can also be anti-nutrients actually, which can hinder the absorption of minerals, vitamins, and so on. So it's very important that the preparation is done properly. Ideally, we should soak these grains and discard the water or even use fermentation, like what happens with bread itself, to reduce these substances and improve digestion. In practice, this means that the body will be able to absorb the nutrients better and the bread becomes easier on the gut. In other words, it's not just what we eat, but how we prepare it that makes a big difference. To make this bread, you will use whole wheat, barley, spelt, lentils, and beans, as I mentioned before. Ideally, you should soak the legumes for a few hours. Discard the water, grind these ingredients until they form a flour-like texture, a dough base, then mix with water, a bit of olive oil, salt, and yeast, and let it rise and ferment until it becomes nice and fluffy. After that, you bake it for about 40 to 50 minutes. There are people who restrict their carbohydrate intake, whether for metabolic reasons or other factors, and they might request a lower carb bread. Of course, it's an adaptation, but you could use, for example, almond flour, flaxseed, a little bit of chickpea flour, just a small amount, and psyllium to increase the fiber content. And then you can add a base of chia seeds and eggs to give it more structure and also increase the protein content. Mixing everything together, adding water and olive oil. You don't need to ferment this, right? You don't need to let it rise, and you can bake it as well. So it can be an interesting alternative. If you want, I'll leave a recipe with the proportions for you down below. Let me know in the comments if you want it. Just a reminder, of course, that this bread is not a miracle food in the sense of, I'm going to eat the bread, have the rest of my diet out of balance, not worry about physical exercise, my sleep, alcohol consumption, and that's it. It'll cure everything and make me healthy. That's not how it works. The bread will help you if you also do your part according to what you need, by having a good diet, a healthy lifestyle, reducing stress. So all of this will help you not only with weight loss, but also with blood sugar control and your overall health. Let me know if you enjoyed learning more about this bread, and if there's another video you'd like me to make on this topic as well. If you like it, let me know so I can bring more videos like this for you. I would love to see your comment. Remember to leave a like on the video. It really helps me out here on the channel. And if you know someone who would like to know about this, share this video. Let's spread this chain of kindness, because that's what I want here with the channel. See you next time. Bye.